This video is about solving and graphing single variable inequalities. Okay, so looking at the inequality that we have up here, 3 is less than negative 5n plus 2n. This is just like solving an equation. So for right now, I'm going to ignore the inequality symbol, and I'm going to draw a line just like I would for solving an equation. So I can combine these two. So negative 5n plus 2n is negative 3n. Okay, so 3 is less than negative 3n. In order to get n all alone, I'm going to divide by negative 3. Now this is really important because any time you divide by a negative, you have to flip the sign. So this answer became negative 1, and n is left over here, but since it was less than and then you divided by a negative, it now becomes greater than. So I can graph that, and I need to make sure that when I solve these, I actually answer and solve. So I want to make sure that I put down negative 1 is greater than n. So I'm going to go on my number line and I'm going to find negative 1. Now I have to look at the sign, and since it's greater than and not equal to, I need an open dot to show me that it's never actually going to reach negative 1. Our open dot is greater than or less than. And then since it's bigger than negative 1, I need to have an arrow pointing to all the numbers that are bigger than negative 1. Okay, so there's our first example. Example number 2, again, this one's just a few more steps, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw my line like I normally would. For right now, I'm going to ignore the sign. Now I have the variable v on both sides of my equation, so I just want to get it onto the same side. So I'm going to add v to both sides because this way it's going to become negative. And I'm going to start combining some of these like terms. So I have 13 plus 3v minus 8 plus 6, and I have a 0 pair right here, is greater than negative 7. So if I have 13 and I subtract 8, I'm left with 5, and then if I add 6 to that, I'll be at 11. So this is going to be 3v plus 11 is greater than negative 7. And I want to get v alone, so I'm going to add 11. I'm sorry, this is plus 11, so I need to subtract 11 from both sides. And I've made a 0 pair right here. So 3v is greater than negative 18. And now I need to divide by 3. And I'm left with, I'm going to move this down just a tiny bit. And I'm left with v is greater than negative 6. And since I wasn't actually dividing by a negative there, I'm keeping the sign the way it was. So now I'm going to find negative 6. And since it again is greater than, I need to use an open dot. And then I want to point to all the numbers that are bigger than negative 6. And we can check our answer to make sure that we're correct. So if I plug in, I'm going to do an easy one. I'm going to say that v is 1. V is equal to 1. That is a number that's bigger than negative 6, so we're just going to check to make sure this works. So if we have 13 plus 2 times -1 minus 8 plus 6 is greater than 7, -7 minus 1. Okay, so 13 plus 2 times 1 is 2, so 15 minus 8 plus 6. 15 minus 8 is 7, plus 6 is 13. And -7 minus 1 is -8. And 13 is greater than -8, so this is true. Okay, I want to do this example. We'll make this one the last one. I want to do this example. I have -5n plus 6 is greater than or equal to -7 times the quantity 5n minus 6 minus 6n. So it says distributive, a whole lot of stuff in here. So we're going to start by actually distributing. So we're going to leave this as -5n plus 6. And we have -35n. And then -7 times -6 is +42 minus 6n. Perfect. Okay, and I want to make n positive because then I don't have to worry about dividing by negatives and changing my sign. That's always my goal, is to keep our variable positive. So I'm going to add 6n so that at the end here we don't have to worry about variables being negative or flipping any signs. So this is going to become +1n plus 6 is greater than or equal to -35n. I guess I could have done both n's at once, but we'll make it into 2 steps. -35n plus 42. So now I'm going to add 35n to both sides. So we have 36n plus 6, looks like B, plus 6 is greater than or equal to 42. And we need to get n alone, so we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. So this is, I need to move this down again. This is going to be our 0 pair right here. So we have 36n is greater than or equal to 36. Nice easy numbers for us. Divide both sides by 36, and since I'm not dividing by a negative, I don't have to worry about flipping the sign. So we have n is greater than or equal to 1. Now, because we have a sign that is equal to as well, we are going to find 1 and we are going to fill in the dot. The filled in dot tells us that the 1 is included in the answer and it is greater than, so we are going to point our arrow, our line and our arrow all the way over to all the numbers that are bigger than 1. So just a few key things to remember. If you divide by a negative, you have to change your sign. So it's greater than becomes less than becomes greater than, and greater than or less than has an open dot, I don't want to confuse you. Equal to does not include the open dot. And then the greater than or equal to or the less than or equal to has the closed dot. All right, there you go. Now you are ready to graph some inequalities.